Hello, everyone. My name is Carlton D'Souza. This is Million Opinions. And today, again, I have Isha D'Souza as our guest and expert in a few topics. Isha D'Souza, as you may know, she is an entrepreneur, a businesswoman who is also heavily invested in real estate in the UAE. And she also helps in company formation, one of the many things that she does. And today I thought I'm going to pick her brain because when people speak about company formation, they have a lot of tall promises on social media. And I did try and reach out to a few of them asking a few questions. However, only Isha said that she is okay to speaking about them. So I was like, why not pick her brain? And if there are any questions with regards to taxations in the UAE, taxations in India, company formation from the start to the finishing, even if you're going to dissolve, or as she likes to call it, from the cradle to the grave, she is going to guide you step by step. So, help me welcome Isha.
Thank you so much, Carlton. It is such a pleasure to be again back in your show. And it's always nice to have a catch up talk with you and see how we can help a lot of people in the UAE.
Isha, thank you. Like I mentioned to our listeners, I did reach out to so many people with company formation and nobody got back to me. And you were kind enough to be willing to answer a few questions. Now, before I ask you these questions, I would also want to tell our audience something that you told me, that these are not financial advices. Every situation is different, every scenario is different. So, if you want to know about anything pertaining to your current view or your current state, I would suggest, or we would suggest, you go and reach out to your financial planner, to your professional, wherever they may be, ask them what is right for your situation. So, this is a disclaimer that I'd like to mention right at the start.
I do mention this to everybody. Setting up a company is something which is very important, and this is your first step towards your entrepreneur journey, right? So you have to take into a lot of things into consideration. In UAE, especially, there are multiple options that you have available from the free zones to the mainland to so many of them, right? But what really fits into your strategy is something that you need to know. Now, what I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs they don't realize this when they are initially setting up a company here. They look into the initial setup cost, but that is only one thing, right? You've got the visa cost associated with that. You've got long-term lease agreements that needs to be looked into, also understanding, and now which is a very hot topic of discussion, how do you, if you're a trading company, how do you bring your goods inside the country, right? Are you an importer or you're an exporter? Which free zone would work the best for you? Even more when now you understand that there are taxations here. A couple of years back, before the whole tax landscape came into the picture, there was no taxation in the UAE. But now, with taxation coming into the UAE, you need to also be very mindful about the business model that you are looking at. And based on that, what or what setup would best fit your requirement. So, as you rightly mentioned, you need to tailor it. You need to get it for proper financial advice that you need to take in and have that consultation before you set up anything in the UAE, right? Because it looks very straightforward, but let me tell you, it is not. With all the taxes and all the compliances, you have to understand what is your strategic roadmap, where you want to get in, and based on that, then create a clear roadmap for your business.
Isha, this podcast is done keeping resilience in mind.
Yeah.
Of course, in the past a month and a half, we've been going through troubled times. And how have you managed this as a parent, as an entrepreneur, and as someone who's invested heavily into the UAE in terms of real estate?
Having resilience and patience in this situation is something which is very important. What I've seen is when a situation happens, people panic and they start doing a lot of things which they need to hold on. You need to hold on to your horses and you need to wait for that right time where you let go, right? So I have been very much a heavy investor in the UAE in terms of real estate. I've bought so multiple properties. But with that, what I realize is a time when the market is slowed down, you need to have the risk appetite to hold it. So, as an investor, I would never put all my eggs in one basket, right? I would have a portion of my investment in real estate. I have a portion of my investment in fixed deposits in UAE. I have a portion of my investments in share market, mutual funds, in the US stock market, in the UAE market, as well as in the ATM market. So one of the most important thing as an investor that you need to understand is how do you diversify your risk? Having a certain portfolio is very important, right? You have to have, when the market is down, at that point of time, you should not panic and try to sell your property for sale. You have to have the risk to hold on to that property. In this policy, a lot of investors make a mistake. They invest everything in real estate or they invest everything into share market, right? So one more, so how can you diversify? So I do tell as a financial advisor to a lot of even my friends, in my close circle, I do also advise a lot of people that you have a kind of a risk profiling done. There are certain investments that are shorter. There are certain investments that are long term. And there's certain thing called as a safety net that you need to maintain, if anything goes south, right? With the whole war situation, what I have seen is it's how your reaction to a situation will define who you become, right? In UAE, I have been almost for 10 years now. In April 2026, I completed 10 years in UAE. So it's been a decade I've been in this market. And as you know, my journey, I started working here, and then I started my entrepreneurial journey in 2022. We were growing, very well in 23 and in 24 in September. By September 24, we smashed the targets to 24, and we were, growing very, very quickly. In that, one risk I kept foreseeing was that we were heavily dependent on one customer. 55% of our revenue was coming in from this customer. And in October 2024, there was a change in the management, and overnight they cancelled all the contracts with us, and we lost revenue of over 55%. And this situation, me and my partner had a meeting, and he told me, so now we've lost almost 55% of our revenue that was coming in from this major account. What do we do? It was not our fault. It was internal management issue that resulted in complete changing of consultants. All the consultants who were working with them were all moved out. But at that point of time, I told him the whole reason why I set up my consulting business as well, I wanted to have that kind of control over situations and what decisions we take, right? Giving that confidence to your own team that if things are there, it will be standing by there. So we do not make even 1% redundant with that situation. We were struggling with cash flows. Month on month, we were struggling with cash flows. Me and my partners, all of this one, we were in real struggle at that point in time. But at the whole thing, what I really believe is your intent. And our intent was to grow this company. And believe it or not, by 2025, we covered the complete losses, I wouldn't say losses, but I would say the whole deficit that had come in because of the loss of this client was filled in. And we clocked in a positive growth in 2025, which was commendable. And we went ahead with appraisals and increases. So during this whole war situation, a lot of employees were panicking a lot. A lot of companies in the market, announced 50% pay cut. They were slashing their teams, renewing people, and we conducted a meeting with all the management team, and we took a call that one of the most important reasons why I set up a consulting business, I left a high-paying corporate job and started a small boutique firm, was that I wanted everybody to feel home. They need to feel that they're valued here. They feel that this is a family, and we're not going to be letting that down. So our full intent has been to ensure that we create that kind of environment for our team, that they thrive and give them that kind of safety net that we are here, right? We do not want people to panic. We do not want people to think what the organization is going to be doing. We are here. We will do everything that takes to support our people and ensure that we grow with them together. So our ambition is that in a couple of years, when we grow, the story has to be that everybody who's working with us, they feel comfortable, confident on our leadership, and we grow together as an organization. So that's been our vision for our organization. As a mother, juggling with work, being an entrepreneur, having the responsibility of, ensuring that my organization is moving forward, even if things are going terribly south. One of the most important things for me is to ensure my girls feel safe as well, right? Right now, as an entrepreneur, I have a lot of more flexibility. What maybe I never had when I was working in a company. So I spend a lot of time with my girls. I'm the one who drives them to most of their classes. I take them personally. I can have a driver. But the time of driving them to a class, the effort that I take in, I think they see that. And when they grow up, they would realize that as a mother, I wait rather than having a driver. I took that initiative of driving them, having those conversations when you want to drive to drop the children is so important to me, right? So I do that. I stay there in the class when they are in the class. I stay outside. So I want to be a supportive mom, ensuring that they get the best opportunity to grow and thrive in this part.
Did they enjoy the online learning? Because my daughters did. They did. I mean, Faith did. Yes.
My elder one, she enjoyed it, and she is somebody who's extremely focused, right? So she's someone who I don't even have to look into, and she is happily doing it, right? The younger one is somebody who's a bit notorious, and she's still playful. She's still young, so she's a bit playful. So getting her to sit and ensuring that she's not on Snapchat or on Roblox is the challenge. With her, especially, it becomes very challenging. But I think it's. I feel all these times, with the COVID happening, sometimes having the war thing, you get those, pockets where you get to understand and realize what really matters in life, resilience, being patient about your goals, and at the same time having faith again.
So, moving on to the property in UAE.
Yes.
Buy, sell, hold, or wait. What are your thoughts right now? The reason I'm asking is because some of them are like, now the markets are going to be favorable to buy. Let's just buy, and with the hope of it's going to rise again and sell it off. Your thoughts?
I have a very close friend of mine. During the COVID, he bought a property for, if I'm not wrong, around 13 million. And the present value a couple of weeks back was almost 65 million, right? So if you have the funds, you must invest. You should not. Like even me, for a matter of fact, I'm looking at investing in a good apartment, especially if you have something which is at a distressed deal. I am more than happy to invest. Again, something which is very important is the deal where you're investing, off plan, or ready to move in. The area, the location is something which is very important.
What or how would a person know that they're ready to buy? And what should they think beyond the deposit that they're paying? Considering the times that we are in right now, yes, distressed properties, all of that is good, provided you do have the money. Now, what if you're a salaried person?
Buying a property in UAE it's a very important decision. And before you take that decision, you need to understand how the big asset works in UAE. One of the most important thing is that you need to know that you need 20% of down payment. You have a 4% of D&D fees. You need to pay 2% as the 2% as commission to a real estate broker. And you need to keep another 0.5 to 0.7% as additional expenses. That could be the trustee fees, the mortgage registration, all of that, right? So basically, when you're buying a property, you need to have at least 27% of money with you. So if you're looking at a property
Of the value.
of the value, so you're looking at a property of 1,270,000 dirhams is that you need to have to buy that property. Now the remaining part of it, which is the 80%, that is 800,000, typically you will be able, if you are a salaried person and you have a good record with the banks, you will easily be able to get a mortgage on that. And that mortgage, the best part is divided over a period of 25 years, right? So the EMI, the monthly installment, sometimes works out to be half or, just 50% of the rental that you actually paying. So what I do tell people is that a lot of people don't understand that, they feel buying a property is a big, humongous task. No, it is, if you break it down properly, it is as simple as, getting a personal finance or car loan, right? Everybody buys a car loan because it's easily accessible. A lot of people do not understand that even buying a property is very easy. They've streamlined the whole process. It's completely regulated by RERA. You would not have any problem. It's extremely transparent process. You call it maybe off-planned or ready property. But what I do recommend in all of this is try to always buy from a very reputed builder. Most of my investments have been with Emaar, with Nakheel, with Dubai properties, because again, you don't want to take that kind of risk of going in with a very small developer and risking it, right? Because it's your hard-earned money. So always going for for a developer who's very strong in the market and who's financially very stable, so that you're safe, you're secure, your money is completely secured with them. That will help you in terms of structuring your finances out.
So this is when you come to buy a property. But when you're planning to sell a property, what are the things that people should know other than just listing property?
Selling the property is you have to list the property again from real estate broker, but you need to understand who is your real estate broker, how much experience your real estate broker has, right, in that area, and is the real estate broker pushing you to do a deal or not even helping you assess the real value of your property. So going to a proper real estate broker is something which is very important. I have been working with some amazing women who've been very good real estate brokers and who've been, helping me buy, sell properties over 10 years. So I always, work with people who I'm very confident on. And I've worked with a couple of these real estate brokers who are hands-on, who've helped me sell my property of with 65% appreciation, from the time I bought the property. I've sold some of the properties with almost 65 to 70% capital appreciation in a matter of 18 months. I have been able to flip properties only because I had very strong real estate brokers who supported me with the entire process and made it seamless for me.
Let's touch on financial protection. Financial protection is matters more than appearance because most of them want to look rich. So, what do you think many people are financially stretched with while trying to maintain a certain lifestyle? And how dangerous is financial denial?
A lot of people are continuously on financial denial, and especially a lot of young people, what I see is they don't realize what is the difference between an asset and creating a liability, right? Or even what kind of asset generates wealth for you in the long run versus what doesn't.
To give us an example of an asset and a liability.
Your house is an asset, right? For me, a car is a liability, right? It wouldn't have that kind of a capital appreciation as compared to your asset or your.
So, if I'm understanding you right, a house you can buy and then later sell it at a higher price compared to your car, which you're going to buy, and because of the depreciation, is going to just lower its value.
Yes, absolutely. And let me give you an example. Like when I was looking at investing, into apartments here. So I had this, where one of my friend told me, why don't you get a Range Rover, Isha? This is at 650,000. And I took that amount and I invested in an apartment and then I flipped it for 1 million, right? If I bought a Range Rover and made a wrong decision, I would have to sell it at 350,000, right? So now I can have two Range Rovers almost with a value, right? So it's so important that you make right financial choices. A lot of people don't do that. Today, where I am in my life, and the asset and wealth I've been able to create is because of the right financial choices that you make. A lot of people do not understand this. They go and invest and try to live something which is beyond their means. I have seen youngsters, going and investing in Chanel bag. Of course, bags again do have a bit of more appreciation, but when you look into cars, sometimes I feel the kind of devaluation that you have in that, so you have to be very categorical. Unless it's an experience that you're really looking at, I would recommend you really want to invest in traveling. That opens up your mind, that changes you as a person, that gives you the visibility and and what you learn out of these travels are beautiful, right? So for me, if you're investing in those things, investing in your health, investing in traveling, investing learning new skills, that is more important. But a lot of youngsters, I feel, invest in a lot of things, unnecessary gadgets, buying phones every year new, right? Getting new cars or flipping cars every 2 years, not realizing that you are wasting a lot of money there. You're not creating an asset. But for me, like I would come from my cousins who are in their early 20s already. In as soon as they started working, they started saving and they had invested already in properties. Again, that's a mindset, a family mindset. We do inculcate and we do, push our cousins and family to help them understand that there is a huge amount of difference between living a lifestyle or creating something which is really wealth free that will help you retire in a much peaceful kind of a structure, is so important.
We did speak about wills in our previous episodes, and I'm going to bring that up again because do you need to have will just because you have property here, or is it you need to have a will period, because it's something which is going to protect your family a lot.
Carlton, what happens is will is only not for properties. You could have bank cards, right? You could have investment in businesses, right? Properties is one part of your net asset value when you look at it. There could be a lot of other things. You could have as simple as an insurance claim, a policy where, if something happens to you, you are protected. So for all of these things, how would you be able to get that to the people you really want? Now in UAE, it is so much more easier. You've got the DIFs, you've got the Dubai courts, you've got the Abu Dhabi courts.
And during this time, especially during the war, there was a lot of there was an increase in people registering in a will. I know you do company formations. Before we go there, say someone has a company or does have bank accounts and assets, and even something that we classify as a liability, but cars. What if they don't have a will? Will the spouse or the family have access to this particular thing?
Let me give you a classic example. My office is in Imar Square, right? And you've got the trustee office as well. And one of the days when I was just coming into my office, I saw this very, very old couple with this young lady and a daughter with her. And I found them very confused and they looked extremely nervous. So, and they were speaking with Malayalam. Me being a Malayali, I thought, let me just check why are they so confused and all over the place. So I just went and the elderly couple were in their late 70s and early 80s. So I just went and asked them, is everything okay with you? So then they told me that they're here because they are trying to sort out the issue with the property for their son. Their son passed away 6 months back, and he apparently didn't have a will in the will. And they had to go to the courts, and they've been in the UAE on and off for 6 months. As per regulation, the parents have to give a NOC so that the property can be transferred. They can sell the property and then divide the assets between all of them. But these parents were late 70s, early 80s, had to fly from India to sign on all these documentation and then, get this property legally sold and get the money out of it. So you understand, Carlton? So if you do not do that, you put a lot of your own people in trouble. You don't have a will and something happens to you and you have old parents in the house, they have to come here. If they don't sign off in the court, your spouse will not be able to have access to this property. Even if your parents want to give them, they cannot. They have to come in, they have to sign, or you need to get a POA done. And a lot of people don't have that kind of understanding and visibility. So I do recommend a lot of people is when you can buy properties worth millions, getting a will registered is peanuts. Do it. Immediately do it. I've spoken to so many real estate brokers and I keep telling them that when you sell a property, please ensure that you make this will as a part of it. Because a lot of people I have seen are struggling afterwards, with the whole mechanism, trying to sort out this problem and the people involved in it, especially if you have aged parents, old parents, you don't want them to go through the hassle after you, trying to figure it out for your children, trying to structure it out. So this is something which is important and this is very, very important for you to take care.
Isha, now we're going to come to your domain. And this is what you do for business. Company formation. Starting a business in the UAE currently. Many people are wanting to start, they need someone to guide. So, what would you say is the best way to start a business in the UAE?
One of the most important things, Carlton, is to understand what business you want to start. See, when you speak about business, it is a very, very, it's a huge area, right? You've got multiple businesses, right? From manufacturing to construction to real estate to services, right? First, understanding what you're good at. Why are you, what's the purpose behind doing certain things, right? Understanding that if it is making money, you need ROI, or you want to have a stable lifestyle, or you want to move out of your geography or diversify your geography, get into new products, lines, services, all of these things are a lot of. I have seen a lot of people, culture, what happens is they do not really understand the purpose why they are starting something, right? Unless you don't have a real purpose behind understanding what you want to do, it becomes very hard for me as even a consultant to help them. So first, I try to understand from my customer that why are we doing something? What is the real objective? Is it an ROI? It's as simple as an ROI. or they are looking at diversifying their risk. They are in one geography, they're working maybe in India, but they want to they want to diversify their market and go into newer geographies. So first, understanding that is very important. The whole objective and purpose, why you're doing something, is the most important thing. Once you have that, then you create a strategic roadmap for them, right? If it is just starting a trading company, but later on they want to set up a manufacturing plant here, diversify into other geographies, get into complete Middle East, or want to be this being their their doors to enter the African market. This is something very important. So first understanding their objective and their purpose, and then helping them to set up the whole structure for them, right? We do a lot of strategic restructuring, strategic planning for them, tax restructuring, tax optimization. Now, all this can be only done when I know the real reason. And if I don't know why we are doing something, I cannot help you, right? So I first sit with my customer, understand the real purpose, the structure, why they need to do certain things, and then create a strategic roadmap for them.
They say if you want to be a very successful person, you need to tell the absolute truth to these few people. One's the priest, can you confess it? That is your lawyer, the doctor, and your financial planner.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's 100%.
I would also add the spouse, but
Yes. You
yeah,
still.
yeah. So, Isha, when you said that, let's give you a scenario of diversifying geography in terms of many Indian businessmen who would want to, or not just businessmen, individuals, let's say, since you're a financial planner, I'm going to pick the financial planning, a financial consultation, and also the company formation. So, what if someone wants to be like Isha, who has invested in UAE and in India? Similarly, someone from India who's based in India, has a company in India, wants to invest either in properties in the UAE or also in companies in UAE. We are going to look at that specific group of people and also speak about what are the differences between taxation in the UAE and in India.
UAE is is the new West. East has become the new West, right? And you have a lot of opportunities what you used to have in a lot of other Western countries. From a taxation perspective, this is one of the lowest taxes in the world right now, right? So here you have a lot of option of optimizing your taxation as well. With that, you get a kind of a environment which is thriving and growing. One of the most important things when we're looking into diversifying the economy, you need to look into the macroeconomic situation of that country and how well it's supporting. Here, at the moment, minus the war, this has been one of the fastest growing economy in the whole world right now, wherein you are seeing a lot of traction happening. This is the gateway to Africa as well, where you have a lot of potential opportunity. With that, proper structuring accounting helps you optimize your tax position. Now, when you look into India, the whole the taxation system in India is quite complex. You've got personal income tax, you've got corporate tax, you've got other taxes like GST, sales tax, and various other surcharges and cess in India. When it comes to UAE, it's very simplified. The whole landscape has just evolved since 2018, right? You don't have personal income tax at the moment. You only have corporate tax if you have VAT here, right? Just from a taxation perspective, the the ease of doing business in UAE is great.
UAE, you said, has one of the lowest tax rates. So, can you tell us what are the tax rates for the UAE?
In UAE, the corporate tax is at 9%, but after your profit crosses the threshold of 375,000, you pay dirhams, you pay a 9% corporate tax on it. Now, also with that, if you are a qualifying free zone person, when I mean a qualifying free zone person, you are based in a designated free zone. You do all your trading and you are doing the activities that have been laid down by the regulation by the Federal Tax Authority. You maintain the economic substance in the free zone. In that case, you pay only 0% tax. So going back to the initial question when you asked me, when you're setting up a company, I mentioned it is so important to understand your business model. Is based on your business model is where we recommend you to open your company, right? So if it is a trading company that's going to be doing trading in goods, I would recommend them to be in a designated free zone, and they are importing and exporting, and most of their model is they are exporting to Africa or other parts of the world, then setting up a company in a designated free zone gives you a lot of tax benefit. So optimizing your tax position is something which is so important as well. And understanding that is so important.
Let's speak about closing the business, Isha. What do people need to understand about starting a company and closing a company?
Setting up a company in UAE is something which is very simple, very straightforward. But a lot of people do not realize that once you set up a company, there are a lot of compliances that you have regularly. You need to file the returns, you need to get your books audited, you need to do a lot of stuff. So if you don't do that, you are absolutely not compliant, and there are fines and penalties that you need to pay for that. So whenever you're deciding not to do your business or discontinue certain operations, what I recommend is you properly liquidate your company. So here, for example, you have set up, you registered with VAT, right? If you do not have business and you're filing zero return for a very long period, as per regulation, you need to deregister your VAT. If you decide to liquidate your business, you need to deregister your corporate tax registration that you've done with the Federal Tax Authority. You need to deregister your company and liquidate your company with the regulator that you are with, RAC ICC, JAFSA, DAFSA, whichever is your regulator. There is a process that all of them follow. You need to appoint a liquidator, and then you need to liquidate your business. A lot of people think that, okay, I don't want this business. I have a bank account. I've closed down my bank account. I just leave trade license and I just leave the country. No, you would accumulate a lot of fines and penalties if you do that, right? Because statutory compliance is mandatory. You need to file returns. You need to ensure all of that is being done correctly. So just don't leave the country. No. Liquidate your company, ensure you've closed down everything so that you do not have any problems in the future.
So, my conversation with you has given me a lot of positives for people who want to start a business over here. But what if someone wants to be a solopreneur? The only person who wants to start a business does not know whether that is something that they want to go for, doesn't want to really invest much. Let's take an example of influencers.
Yes.
Now, recently the law has come up that you need to have an influencer permit in order to be an influencer.
Absolutely.
And the way that any influencer would earn money is through representing various companies for their ads because they have a very good following. Also, when it comes to affiliate marketing, when it comes to having their own merchandise, how easy it is to get an influencer permit, and is that all we need to get, or is there more?
Influencer permit, to be honest, Carlton, is very simple and very straightforward. But a lot of people do not understand to do any business, even marketing, or you need to have a valid trade license, right? What I've seen, a lot of people completely ignore that and think that just an influencer permit, but you are doing a business activity. When you are doing constantly branding, marketing, merchandising, it's a business activity. It counts as a business activity. And you must get a license with that. Many times I've seen people totally ignoring that fact and just thinking that, it is just free lunches that they're getting or free hotel stays they're getting, and they're posting it on their social media handle. That's okay. You don't need to. No, they all form, and you need to register you need to have a trade license. You need to register for VAT if you cross the threshold of 375,000 AED per year. Corporate tax is mandatory. You need to register for corporate tax. Of course, the payment only when you make some profits after all your costs. So this is something very important, and a lot of people ignore it. And even if it's a micro business, right? It is a business. You are generating out of it. So you need to get trade license for your company.
So, in order for one to get a trade license in a similar setup, like an influencer or an online earnings, what would be the cost of doing business?
So for me,
Trade license, setting up a trade license.
see, trade license, there are various options available in the market. You've
Let's
got
give us a range, the minimum be, and for the appropriate purposes.
So for me, what I understand, there are different free zones like it's MEDA, RAC ICC that are giving trade license right there from a very bare minimum cost, from 6,000 dirhams to 12,000 with visas, multiple visas, so there are various options available, Carlton, in the in the market. But again, what I keep coming back to people is try to understand what is your vision. where do you see yourself in? A lot of people completely neglect that fact that what is my vision? Why am I setting up a company? If your vision is to grow and make it a huge brand, you need to have that kind of visibility when you're setting up a company, right? So you need to be very prepared and then make very strategic choices. Now, what we do is we work with a lot of H9s and influencers, and we give them a package where we support them with strategic roadmap because a lot of them need guidance in terms of financials. They are not there yet, right? So helping them keep the books of accounts, ensuring that they file their returns, they register for VAT, they register for corporate tax, and they do filing. We do a lot of hand-holding support to such people to ensure that they structure themselves properly. Or a lot of them would later on end up with a lot of files if they don't structure them properly. So we do help a lot of companies with that at it.
So if I'm to understand you correctly, Isha, is you're saying that you provide step by step guidance and also the service of doing accounts and all of that. So that person, like if it's me and I want to focus only on my social media, only on my influencer thing activity that gives me money, you're going to do all the work that is needed legally.
Absolutely. So we take care of complete compliances, right? From maintaining accounts for you to keeping, ensuring all your compliance are up to date. If you require AML compliance, doing all your filing. AML, anti-money laundering. Anti-money laundering. You know, all your AML compliances if you require, ensuring all of your compliances are up to date and you are sorted and you're not stressed about compliance. See, one of the most important thing is as an influencer or as a business owner, that you need to focus on your operations, right? You should be focusing on that. If you are if you're always worried about filing of your returns, whether the compliance has been correctly or not, then that puts in a lot of pressure on you. So what I do tell a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs and influencers that leave that dirty part to us. We are here to support you. We are here to help you structure all of that out. You focus on you growing as an individual. Here we are here to back you up and help you, providing you all the framework, all the structure so that you can focus on your real business.
Is it right to say that the summary of this is if you want to start a company and you don't know where you're going, but you have a slight idea, you want to start off small and then slowly grow, you will be able to guide them step by step in order for them to reach their goals from very humble beginnings all the way to what they have in mind, fully supporting them through the compliance and the accounting.
Completely cut. So we do take a pride in saying we support companies from cradle to grave, right? And I do help, and I personally enjoy working with a lot of entrepreneurs in helping them understand how do you navigate in your entire journey. A lot of them are, startups, right? They really do not know anything about compliance or bookkeeping or accounting or even helping them find investors. Some of them have great ideas, but they do not have investors. Now, what I do is, in a lot of time, I become that middle person, right? Where I see a very good potential idea and I see a lot of passion person to make it work. I do introduce them to investors in this whole structure and create an ecosystem for them so that they can thrive. And vice versa, where I see a lot of companies where I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have a lot of funds and who want to invest in great ideas or great concepts or want to invest in businesses that are having great ROI. I introduce. So I'm sometimes the business matchmaker, I can say, where I do help, introduce you to the right person in my own ecosystem because I feel the only way to grow is to grow together. If you want to grow and you create your own community here and you help each other grow, introduce the right people, you go faster. You need somebody who you can call on and check, okay, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right business move? Or, be part of their board meetings or, have at least strategic conversation in terms of aligning, redirecting, is this the right strategy or not?
She's a giver. She's blessed. She wants to share. So that is Isha D'Souza for you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I love our conversations and I would love to have you on the show once again at a future date.
Thank you so much, Carlton. It's such a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And I'm so glad and grateful that I'm connected with you and, we are building this community together.